This is the case of Australia's most famous missing children.
The Beaumont family consisted of 9-year-old Jane, 4-year-old Grant, and 7-year-old Anna. The children lived with their parents, Grant Jim Beaumont and Nancy Beaumont, who got married in December 1955, 11 years prior to the case. They lived in Adelaide, South Australia. On Australia Day in 1966, which was the 26th of January, there was a heat wave, and so the three of them set out to Glenelg Beach, which is in Adelaide. 9-year-old Jane had learnt the local bus routes, and so the children had been on previous unsupervised outings. Having said that, the beach was 5 minutes away from their home. On the day, Glenelg Beach was hot and had large crowds swimming in the sea. The three children took the 8:45 a.m. bus to the beach and were supposed to return home between 12 and 2 p.m. Their father Jim returned home at 3 p.m. and seeing as the three children weren't home, he set out to Glenelg Beach to find them. The mother Nancy decided to stay home in case they returned. Jim searched the beach and the bus stop but came back empty-handed. Shortly after, Jim and Nancy went around the neighborhood searching for their three missing children. Jim said that by this point he knew something was wrong. Quote, "I knew there was something wrong if they weren't home. The thought going through my mind was that they had been taken away. I didn't think they could have been drowned because there were so many people down there." By 7:30 p.m, the children were still nowhere to be seen, and so the parents resorted to calling the police. The following day, they had offered $250 for any information which could lead them to finding the kids. The airport and train stations were alerted on the missing children, and roadblocks were put on the border to monitor those who left or entered the state. On the night of the disappearance, a woman had confided in the police and told them that she had seen the children earlier that day by the harbour, and the police decided to drain the marina, but found nothing, and at this point the police started to consider this as a kidnapping case rather than three children who had got lost. The father Jim was a former taxi driver, and so many taxi drivers came together to spread the news and awareness. In the end, a diverse group of people searched the area on foot.
How do all three of them go missing? That makes me feel as though it's not like an opportunistic crime.
I tell you how they all went missing. They are 9 years old, 4 years old, and 7 years old, and they're getting on a bus.
Yeah. Would you ever let your kids do that?
I know is it 60s, right? It's 90, it's the 60s.
Times were different.
Times were different, but like, it's still that stupid though. Still that is just genuinely stupid. Like, I'll tell you what, in the 60s, we were going to the moon. So we couldn't have been that fucking stupid.
Things were different back then, though. Like, it was common, just like your kids are out and they're playing. Like, first of all, I would never let my kids.
Kids are out though. Like, one of them is 4, man.
But yeah, but the times were just different back then. I promise you, it was. Like, you would just allow this to happen. Yeah. But yeah, my God, I couldn't imagine the stress of a parent not seeing your kid like that. Yeah. And then what is interesting is that it sounds like everybody got involved in this case. And what I mean is, like, the community really came together. All the taxi drivers were on it. Someone has to have seen 3 children being taken somewhere. Yeah. Children are not quiet.
It's during the day as well, so we know that it was like morning to afternoon because we were meant to be back home for like 2. So it's broad daylight.
Yeah.
They're at the beach. It's not. I can't imagine it's
secluded. Busy. It's a busy day.
It should be busy. Kids have gone there. Surely somebody's seen something.
Another thing that I think about as well is because it's 3 kids, and I get, they are young, and obviously, like, one guy or people, they can overpower them, but I don't think it would have been like a kidnap them quickly and take them. Like, that's 3 kids you're gonna have to get, right? So they've definitely been coerced somewhere.
Yeah, like an adult's walking with them, like, let's get some ice cream, guys, something like that.
Round the back here, there's an ice cream, and then from there, but this is pretty terrifying, honestly.
Everyone was trying to be helpful, and so the police were flooded with messages and tips. Any towel, sandal, or flip-flop that was found at the beach was given to the police. The detective on the case said, quote, "We had 1 phone for the main police station. That's all we had, and people were queuing up to give statements and what have you, and we only had a sergeant and 4 men there. They were just snowed under, and by the time you interviewed people and typed up their reports and everything, it was just one of those things where you could only do your best. We still had our own work going on. There was still crime being committed in Glenelg." After some time, the authorities concluded that the children had gone to Wenzel's bakery at around midday for some food, as Jane had bought some pasties with a $1 note which her mother didn't give her, instantly raising questions. The baker apparently remembered this interaction because he found it unusual that the kids ordered a meat pie, as they had never ordered that before. After commenting on it, the children revealed it was actually for someone else. The last sighting of the children was at around 3 p.m. by a postman who claimed they were walking in the general direction towards a house. However, later on, the postman rescinded his statement and claimed that he actually saw them in the morning, and he was confused. Some witnesses came forward and claimed they saw a man who was around 30 years old in a blue Speedo talking and grouping some kids together, but no one batted an eye as the children seemed to be quite calm and comfortable around him, and no sign they were being held against their will. Anna used to joke to her mother about Jane having a boyfriend at the beach, something which was previously seen as a joke, but as time went on and this strange man was mentioned, Nancy started to believe that this man had already previously befriended the children at the beach.
So, super interesting here because the kids have gone and bought a pasty, right, with a $1 note, and the guy that sold them the pasty has noticed something unusual. They usually don't buy a meat pasty. And also, the mother didn't give them the money. So he's questioned the kids on, why are you getting the meat pasty, whatever, and they've actually said that the pasty was for someone else.
Yeah.
So what we were just saying earlier, where, they've been coerced, walking along, whatever, sounds like that, right?
I do find it weird though. Theoretically, put yourself in the man's shoes, as much as you might not want to do that, right? Why would you just go, oh, actually, before I kidnap these children, let them just go get me a pasty really
I
quick.
think one of them I think it would have been like this. He would have been trying to make sure that he's seen as friendly as possible. Maybe like, oh, guys, you hungry? You want to ask me you want something? They go, yeah. He hands it over. They go and get it. They're having a great time. They're enjoying it. They're starting to trust him.
Okay.
Boom. That's I can see.
Yeah,
that
I see
happening.
what you're saying now.
He's obviously hidden out a thing. He'd always like, you guys go get a pasty. I'll wait over here. Obviously.
The idea that Jane having a boyfriend at the beach and all this, the bit at the end there, and the idea that these kids had actually maybe previously met this guy before to have that sort of trust in them. Did the kids know this person is what I'm trying to say from something else?
I think so. When they say boyfriend at the beach, it's obviously some guy that maybe talks to her every time she goes to the beach.
Yeah.
Probably friendly, and he's joking about it, like, oh, it's your beach boyfriend, whatever.
Yeah.
And then potentially he's seen the opportunity here, the kids are on their own, and he was just a weirdo.
Yeah.
The whole time it was part of something bigger.
That would not surprise me. I just think there's a lot of audacity to do this on the day where it's one of the busiest days on the beach. It just seems.
But it's like hiding in plain sight. Like it's so
much is going on that you can't really take notice of one thing, right?
And if he's playing it super cool, all it will look like is just a guy walking with his 3 kids.
Yeah, you're right.
On November 1966, the police flew in a psychic. His name was Gerard Crosse, and he was Dutch. He claimed to have seen the children buried in a warehouse near their school. The authorities had no actual evidence and so refused to do anything. But with Gerard's knowledge, the local community formed a Citizens Action Committee and altogether raised $40,000 to demolish the site. The site was excavated and took a year to finish, but nothing was found. 2 years later, the Beaumont parents received 2 letters which were postmarked from a town 450 miles away from Adelaide. One signed off by Jane and one by the perpetrator. The man claimed he had the children in his possession and appointed himself as guardian. Jane said her life was okay. The police compared these letters to previous samples of Jane's handwriting and concluded the letters were authentic. The letter from the man named a place and a time where the parents were meant to come and meet him if they wanted their children back. The parents went to this spot and brought a detective with themselves, but unsurprisingly, nobody showed up. A short while after, the man sent another letter, where he said that he had changed his mind and decided not to give the children back to Jim and Nancy, as they had broken his trust by bringing the detective with them. In 1986, 3 suitcases filled with newspapers on the case were found by some garbage. On these pages, lots of information was striped through, and there was red ink written across the paper. Across the sketch of the suspect, it said, "Lies, all bluff." But this was later found to be the work of internet sleuths, specifically one who was obsessed with the case. However, she passed away and so the bags were thrown out. Some people believe them to have escaped to Mud Island, which is 90 kilometers southwest of Melbourne, and residents on the island and British freighter crews were questioned, but nothing came from that either. Similar to other cases, fingers were eventually being pointed at the parents.
This has got to be heartbreaking for just the family in general. Could you imagine? First of all, bringing in a sidekick is a bit of a long shot. I know back then they probably trusted in sidekicks a little bit more, but you have to be thinking, is this case really doing that well? If you're bringing in a sidekick, and then for them to raise all that money, $40,000 back then, think about how much that is worth back then. That is so much money.
It's a little bit confusing.
For them to be disappointed, they didn't find anything.
Yeah, and a sidekick is sidekick, man. Like, you don't know if it's you've raised $40,000, demolished a warehouse just because some bloke's gone, yeah, saw it in my mind.
Yeah,
it's a bit.
That's what I mean.
But yeah, like you said, back in the day, things were different.
Yeah, things were different, and I also think back in the day as well. I mean, if you're a family and this person says this, you're gonna get a bit of hope there. Like, it's not like
desperation.
You would look.
Yeah.
Like, regardless, like even if it was today now, and a psychic says, "I've seen your child here," you're gonna go and look. You're 100%. Not just gonna dismiss it because 100%. It would eat you alive if this whole time, for whatever reason, they were right.
To be honest, I'd probably even demolish the building as well.
Now, these letters, they were verified authentic. This whole scenario happened. And then what? The guy was like, "Oh, actually, I changed my mind." I think it was definitely just a case of, we've had it before where people send in letters to newspapers, they like the attention, they feel like they have control over a situation. Do you actually think this was the guy? I mean, it says it was authentic, but how can you prove that?
I mean, I guess they said they've matched up the handwriting to Jane's actual handwriting. Yeah, I think it'd be difficult for an adult to match up a child's handwriting and, pass it off as authentic. Obviously, back then, maybe they made more mistakes analyzing handwriting more. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they said it was legit.
Yeah, and maybe they did mess up by bringing a detective, but surely they would have done a good job of concealing this detective.
And he's appointed himself as a guardian of the children now. Like, what?
Yeah.
If he has, why would he tell them to come and meet them to get the children back? It's just a bit odd.
It's almost like a personal thing for him. Like, he just wanted to see the parents, see if they were still wanting.
Surely this would have the parents convinced that they had to constantly just follow up on this lead is the lead. The letter was confirmed authentic. I would never stop chasing down this lead if I was them.
Let's take a little look at a few of the suspects in this case.
Bevan was in prison for murdering a 15-year-old. He was suspected by many to have been involved in many other murders, including the Beaumont children. He was known to have visited Glen Elk Beach often. Some informants claimed he had boasted to others about having abducted 3 children from a beach and had managed to take them home to conduct some other experiments and tests. These tests led to one dying during a procedure and the other 2 being subsequently killed. This informant had mixed responses. Some claimed he was a very reliable source, whilst others didn't believe this confession. The police also didn't consider Bevan as a suspect until the informant came forward. Plus, Bevan's victim pool tended to be teenagers and 20-year-olds. Victims much older than the Beaumont children.
Okay. Look, this suspect is... The only thing that is sort of taking him away from this is the fact that his usual victim's age is teenagers and 20-year-olds, and obviously all of these were under 10. I do think it's a bit weird, like, surely they then went and looked into him a bit more. I mean, they said they didn't consider him a victim until this informant came forward. Sadly, they said that all 3 died, like he was performing tests and procedures and all that sort of stuff on
That's
them.
what the informant says, and the police do claim that the informant is a very reliable source. Some others didn't believe him so much.
Did they not look into it more though? Like, so why did they not go with him? That's
maybe it's a case of he'd killed the children and every speck of evidence has been disposed of.
Yeah, maybe that would be.
And he's killed before he was in prison for murdering a 15-year-old, so this isn't his first time. Probably knew what he's doing.
And maybe he was just going younger and younger. Who knows? Anyways, let's take a look at the next one.
Derek was a child murderer and was considered a suspect. In a previous case, he had pled an insanity plea, which was based on the fact he couldn't remember certain parts of his actions. He was in Adelaide at the time of the murders, but due to his psychological state, he couldn't remember what he was doing. However, at the time of the murders, he was 17 years old and too young to fit the description of the man at the beach. Derek remained in prison until he died in 2013.
I do think that, again, at the age of 17, it was probably too young. I mean, this person clearly understands how kids' brains work, how to manipulate them, gain trust from them. And I think at 17, you just don't have that sort of knowledge. I'm willing to write off Derek here, and he did die in 2013.
Yeah, he stayed in prison the whole time.
Mental.
Wow, a life of prison.
Alan Mcintyre, who was questioned about his involvement in this case, named a man named Alan Munro as a suspect. He claimed that he had gone to Alan's house and had the dead bodies of children in his boot. Alan Munro himself was imprisoned for 10 child sex offences. Detectives on this case were given a child's diary which included entries around the disappearance in 1966. Due to this diary, they were able to figure out that he had also sexually abused one of Alan Mcintyre's sons.
Not gonna lie, to me, it does seem like Alan Mcintyre just wanted to almost get a bit of revenge for what was done to his son on this Alan Munro. There's just not enough tying Alan Munro to the case of these 3 kids. Obviously, what happened to Mr. Mcintyre was horrible, but it does sound like he was just trying to get this Munro fella down for whatever he could.
Yeah, and I mean, getting him in prison, that's a good thing, but I don't know. It was just the child's diary, which did have the entries around that time, but that's not really enough.
Yeah, that's not going to do it for me anyways.
James had apparently confessed to an individual about being responsible for the disappearance of the children. A documentary came out which linked him to the case and spoke about him in an accusatory tone. He went to court and lost the case, meaning the document was allowed to be broadcasted. The detective in the broadcast had spent a lot of time talking to James and was confident he was responsible or played a part. There was no concrete evidence to link James to the murders, but apparently due to James's work, he would have to frequently travel to Coober Pedy, which is about 846 kilometers from Adelaide. And although he claimed he had never visited Adelaide, to get to Coober Pedy, he would have had to go through Adelaide.
James O'Neill, what are your thoughts here, Chip?
I mean, the only thing linking him to it is the fact that he lied and said he'd never visited Adelaide, and to get to the place where he frequently travelled, Coober Pedy,
I mean,
he
look, this
had
guy,
to go through Adelaide.
He did confess that he did this.
Yeah.
Right. So it was
and
obviously the confession. Yeah, I don't like why confess, and then they've obviously followed up on it. Nothing has come from it.
There's so many false confessions that happen all the times in these cases, and if he's confessed and they can't find a single thing after he's literally said he's done it, then it's really hard to say that this is the guy.
Maybe he just liked the attention. I mean, he took that documentary to court as well, so obviously that creates a bit of a fiasco around it. Yeah, just a little bit bizarre, the confession, but they still just couldn't tie anything to
the detective that was involved really believed it was him, but I don't know, like that. That's
not enough.
You can't just go based off, the detective thinks it's him, it must be him.
Yeah.
2 workers told the police in 2013 that a man named Harry Phipps had asked them to dig a hole on the property of his factory on Australia Day in 1966. The authorities went to the site and dug the ditch up, but only found animal bones and rubbish. During the inquiry into Harry Phipps, it came out that he had sexually assaulted his son Aidan during his childhood, and the son would not have been surprised if he was involved. In an interview, he claimed to have seen his dad talking to 3 kids and actually bringing them to the house. After Harry passed away, the police searched his house and found a white clutch in his basement. A clutch which was very similar to the one Jane was carrying on the day of her disappearance. But his ex-wife claimed she had bought the bag and it was hers. The police questioned her as to why she discarded the bag and left it in the basement. The ex-wife went on to get extremely defensive and asked the police to leave.
I mean, this one here, Chip, this is actually really interesting. Part of me, to begin with, I actually just thought, you know what, maybe this son just has a lot of resentment for his dad for what he did to him, despised him, and wanted to just throw everything at him. So he chucked in this story. Particular case.
Yeah.
But then the bit that sort of made it a little bit more interesting was all about the bag.
Handbag.
The clutch obviously being found there, and the way the wife was super defensive about it when she was actually questioned. I don't know about you, Chip, but for me, it's definitely between James O'Neill and Harry Phipps here. Both of them very opposite. I mean, a lot of the times we do get a lot of false confessions, by the way. That's one thing I've seen since doing this channel, is the amount of people that will just confess for attention. Like, this is not the attention you're after, sir.
No, yeah. I like the Harry Phipps one. I think, he's got experience of assaulting, like, his own son.
Yeah.
His son has said that he saw him with 3 kids. He brought him to the house. You got the white clutch bag?
Yep.
That was found in the basement, very similar to what Jane had.
Yeah.
That's tying up a little bit. The wife gets super defensive, bit odd.
Why so aggressively defensive?
When I asked why was it in the basement? Oh,
surely you'd be
secret
like,
could
he
be.
got it from me.
It's that is she involved?
Yeah.
Does she know? Is she protecting him? Something along those lines. I feel like they should have gone into us a little bit more.
Look, guys, it is one of those. It is unsolved. So we do have some up-to-date information, though. Both parents had separated after the child's disappearance. I can only imagine the toll it would take on a family. Nancy actually died in 2019 at the age of 92. Jim is still alive. Now, the Australian government has a reward which has actually amounted to it's there. It's 7 figures. It's $1 million for any information which can lead to solving this case. Obviously, it's been a long time now. I would be surprised if a case like this does get solved. But we see weirder things. Sometimes they're creating a new house. They dig up on the house and they find the bones and the remains. Now, this case has been linked to some other cases in South Australia in the 60s and 70s, such as the disappearance of Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirsty Gordon. So is it a serial job? That's what I mean.
Yes.
Is this might not be as isolated as we think, but the sad thing is it never got solved.
Yeah, if someone's able to get away with the kidnapping and potential murder of 3 children in broad daylight, one of Australia's busiest days, I'm pretty sure they could get away with it again.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, let us know. What do you think about this case? What do you think about the suspects as well? Like I said earlier, for me, it's James O'Neill and Harry Phipps that really stand out to me. The first one that we spoke about, where he would do like tests on the kids and things like that, I'm not too sure about that one. Just because, like we said, it tended to be teenagers, mid-20s. Would they go under 10?
Not his usual MO.
Yeah. But, Chip, tell them what they need to do.
Make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and you can follow the show on Spotify. And we will see you all 6 p.m. next Monday.